Welcome to Health, Wellbeing and Lifestyle, where professionals in the field educate, inform and inspire the community to live a healthier and balanced life and live the lifestyle they love. Our first guest today is holistic counsellor Barbara Jackson, and we'll be talking about an holistic approach to anxiety. Welcome to the program, Barbara.
Thank you, Melissa. It's a pleasure to be here.
Barbara, in terms of anxiety, what is it?
So, Melissa, anxiety is something that many of us experience at different periods in our life. It's the fear of what may happen. So it may be based on experiences we've had and the fear of them being repeated, or it may be the fear of new experiences. Having to see somebody we don't know, go to an environment that makes us feel unsafe, unsecure. So the anxiety is the fear of feeling threatened or feeling that we won't be able to keep safe in the space or with those people. People experience anxiety in many different ways. So there's heavy breathing, increased heart rate, adrenaline rushes, what we call our stress hormone, cortisol, also flows really, really strongly. And so we're in what we call the fight, flight or freeze mode. And sometimes people don't understand that this is actually anxiety. They may feel, oh, I felt a bit rattled in that. And when they realize that this is something that repeats quite frequently, different circumstances or the same circumstances, then they can look into and maybe understand that it is actually anxiety they're experiencing. What happens as well, they may sweat. They may have the shakes. They may feel nauseous. They may feel that they feel really weak or tired. They can also feel confused or overwhelmed. And then on a more spiritual level, they may feel completely disconnected from all the energies, all the resources that they would normally have. So many people also experience anxiety to the extent where it leads to a panic attack, which is a really exacerbated level of all of those symptoms.
With anxiety, how would you use a holistic approach to deal with it?
So a holistic approach is looking at our mental, emotional, physical and spiritual well-being. So first of all, we would check with the client if they had actually been for a medical check to see that there isn't anything physically happening, chemical imbalances or anything like that. Then we would look at their history and gently and nurturingly explore when the anxiety started, how it started. They may know, they may not recognize it. They may go, well, it just happens. I don't know. So helping them to explore the causes, the triggers of the anxiety. With the holistic approach, this may also be bringing in energy healing, something like Reiki, also looking at maybe using some essential oils, some sound healing, and we can explore that at a later date as well. It's a big topic. However, it's also helping them to get to the root cause. So when we go to the root cause, that's where the healing can begin. Clients then also learn things like breathing techniques, because when we're in that panicky, anxious state, we're not really breathing properly. When we learn to take those slower, deeper breaths, we're slowing down our heart rate. We're slowing down the adrenaline. We're slowing down the cortisol. You know, sometimes when you just take that big breath and have a sigh, and it's like, oh, that feels better. So this is very similar, except we do repetitive, slow, deep breathing. This takes a person into what we call the parasympathetic state. So it's resetting our system and bringing us back into the present, where we're then able to take that moment to go, am I safe? What is the actual fear? And how else can I navigate it in a calmer state, in a more relaxed state?
Talking about the past and, is a holistic approach based in the past?
Oh, Melissa, if we look back at Hippocrates, some people may not have heard of him. So he's a Greek person who he actually started looking at us as a whole, as a mind, body and soul. And through his studies, he actually introduced a holistic approach to well-being. And it's also important for us to understand that beyond anxiety, a holistic approach can also support us if we're experiencing depression or trauma. It can support us if we're experiencing something like low self-esteem, or when we feel that we're stuck in our lives, we don't know how to move forward. So there are various approaches and techniques within the holistic counselling that can help us to untap why we're stuck, why we're holding on to the trauma. And when we heal, the important thing to remember is our story is still our story. So we may still have had the anxiety. However, it's not all consuming now. If you take a book, a big, bright, colourful book, and you open it up, or you're watching a movie and you feel like you're stepping into the colour and you're stepping into all the emotions of it, when we heal, we're still able to tell our story. That book becomes that dusty old tatty book that we can put on the bottom of the bookshelf somewhere, because we're not stepping into the raw emotions of the anxiety or the trauma or the depression. So we're able to then move forward in life with hope, with joy, with focus, and also with strategies. When we look at our breathing, when I did talk about slowing down our breathing, there is a vagus nerve, which is the longest nerve that goes from our head all the way down to our digestive system. When we reset that, we do it through a breath that's an inhale of 5 to the count of 5, and then we exhale slowly to the count of 10. And again, this slows our whole body down, helps the shoulders drop, help us to see things a lot clearer, to focus a lot better, because we also bring in oxygen into our brain as well. So this helps us in many, many ways, and also helps our digestive system as well.
What advice would you give to people who would like to go and use this approach in their journey?
Oh, certainly, Melissa. It's first of all making sure that you seek professional advice, making sure that whoever you are going to see, that you feel you connect with them. Somebody's already anxious and they then going to a stranger, that's not necessarily going to help the anxiety. So with having that little conversation, it helps them to feel a little bit more comfortable and supported when coming to see me, or going to see any other professional as well.
Well, thank you very much for that. I learnt quite a lot.
Thank you very much.
If you would like to know more about a holistic approach to anxiety and Barbara, you can go to her webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And after the break, we'll have another guest with an interesting topic. Stay tuned. After the break, holistic grief counsellor Gemma Kyriakou will be talking about managing the grief and loss of a pet. Welcome back. Our second guest is holistic grief counsellor Gemma Kyriakou, and we'll be discussing how to manage the grief and loss of a pet. Welcome, Gemma. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Melissa.
Losing a pet, is that like losing a member of the family?
Yes, absolutely. Losing a pet is like losing a member of the family. They're treated like a member of the family and they're held in high regard like a member of the family. Your pet has been with you. It could be with you for a short time or a long time. A lot of the time, your pet has been with you through some very dark times and some very high times, some very exciting times. But they've been through all these life events with you, and with unconditional love. So losing a pet can be equally as painful as losing a member of the family that is human, for example. People have pets for many different reasons. For example, it may be a guide dog. It may be a support animal. It could be the family cat or dog that you bought for your children. So there has to be so much consideration that goes into that choice for your children to grow up with, and it will often be their first experience of the life and death cycle. Also, people that are on their own and they have an animal as a companion that has been their companion for maybe 20 years. and all of a sudden they are gone. They're left with an intense loneliness. There's a huge void for them now, which has multiple consequences.
Everyone approaches grief of a pet differently. Within a family, are there consequences after the death of a pet?
Quite often you'll find the consequences of the death of a pet. For example, someone that lives on their own and they've lost their dog that's been with them for 20 years. It's been with them through thick and thin, highs, lows, and loved them unconditionally and being such a support to them. And now not having them there can create such a loneliness and a big void in that person's life. And it will affect their life, for example, in many cases where you lose your social interaction of the day, where you'll be taking your dog for a walk. If you're in a family setting, explaining to your children, having that hard conversation of the life and death cycle and choosing, the next pet, for example, very carefully due to the lifespan of different. Also, the consequences of losing your pet is for the physical and emotional well-being. So not only do you not get your daily exercise and your social interaction at, say, the dog park, say you have a cat and your cat is on your lap and it purrs. That purr has a frequency, it has a vibration, which is scientifically fact. It lowers blood pressure, lowers the stress hormone, and it promotes relaxation. So now when that animal is not there, your physical and emotional well-being is, slightly compromised along with your grieving. It's important also to take into consideration when the death of an animal to just maybe take a little breather. Maybe don't rush into getting another pet. Quite often than not, the immediate response from people will be, just get another dog, just get another cat. And it's not always that easy. Yeah, so replacing an animal, take a little breather. For example, a friend of mine back in our childhood, she had a cockatoo. It was the family cockatoo. And the cockatoo was called Candy, loved it. It was so funny. Had great personality. Now the cockatoo died, unfortunately, and they replaced the cockatoo, I think within a couple of weeks. And unfortunately, the cockatoo was actually quite vicious and it was nothing like the original cockatoo. So I think they felt like they should have just waited a little bit longer rather than trying to replace, the personality of the previous animal. Because all animals have such unique personalities. They're all souls. They all have their own personalities. It's important to validate people's grief when it comes to losing an animal. It can be an extremely traumatic experience. Just because the animal is not human, we can still respond in exactly the same way as if it was a significant loved one. For example, when I had two cats. One was accidentally knocked over by a car. It had some kittens, so I kept a kitten. And I loved that kitten. Now, this just totally rocked my world. I took extreme measures, I made big life changes after that. I was absolutely traumatized by the passing of my cat. But what actually was coming up was former trauma. After my mother had passed away, I hadn't processed what had happened. So losing two cats in such a short space of time, 3 years later, was a delayed grief reaction for me. And from what happened there, I made a lot of different choices, self-sabotage, cut relationships, big changes in someone's life that can occur from losing an animal, which is actually a result of a past trauma. It's also really important to validate people's feelings and reactions when it comes to losing an animal. In my case, when I lost both my cats, so I was extremely distressed by this, and I made a lot of life decisions after that. But what it actually brought up for me was, and my reaction, it was quite extreme, and I made lots of different choices at that time, was I had not processed the death of my mother that had happened 3 years previous. So this was bringing up previous trauma for me that I hadn't processed. Also, we can have anticipated grief, especially when we know we have to euthanize our pets. We know the time is coming. We know we have to put them to sleep, and this can bring a lot of anxiety and again some previous traumas to the forefront for us. But also losing a pet very suddenly, the trauma of it being there 1 minute and not the next, again, is equally as traumatic, and they both have to be validated.
What advice would you have for people dealing with the grief and loss of a pet?
My advice would always be to reach out to a trusted friend, keep those lines of communication open. It really is about trying not to self-isolate and hide away. Keep your lines of communication open. There are support groups out there. You can search them. They're for people that have lost their animals. Sometimes listening to stories that are similar to yours can bring comfort. But if you do feel like those feelings of grief are becoming overwhelming, because it's very normal for that to happen, then please seek a professional counsellor that can help you navigate your emotions and your feelings.
Thank you, Gemma. That's been really insightful.
Thank you, Melissa.
If you'd like to know more about how to manage the grief and loss of a pet and Gemma, you can go to her webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And after the break, we have another guest with an interesting topic. Stay tuned. After the break, psychotherapist specialising in hypnotherapy Julie Makin will be talking about, are you in control of your anger or is it controlling you? Welcome back. Our last guest is Julie Makin, a psychotherapist specialising in hypnotherapy, and we will be discussing an important question. Are you in control of your anger or is it controlling you? Welcome, Julie.
Hi, thank you.
So tell us, how does someone know if they're in control of their anger or not?
Okay, well, firstly, I would say that there is no control with anger. So what happens when we get angry is our prefrontal cortex actually just switches off. We go into that fight-flight scenario, and we have no logic, we have no impulse control anymore. So really, I would say that if you're experiencing anger, you're actually not in control. And the way I look at anger is a subsidiary of fear. So what I would ask you next is, what is it that you fear? What is at your base of what it is that you actually fear? What is it that you're avoiding asking yourself?
Okay, so how does anger connect with fear and a deeper belief about yourself?
Okay, so the way it actually works, when we go to the doctor, okay, generally we might have a rash or a physical wound on us, or we're feeling sick or something like that, and we go to the doctor. But when we have something like an internal wound, it gets touched, and then we respond from that pain and that hurt. Therefore, the anger comes up. So when I'm not feeling good enough, I'm feeling really hurt and I've got pain, that is going on. And therefore then I am responding with that anger, and I'm putting blame onto that other person. I felt like my words weren't important to this other person. I felt like my words weren't important. And if my words aren't important, then I'm not important. And if I'm not important, I'm not good enough. This is my base belief. So when my base belief of I'm not good enough gets touched like a wound inside. And when I worked it out, okay, so it really has to do with my base belief about how I feel about myself, that I am not good enough. I know that that is what I need to work on. The I'm not good enough. I don't matter.
Do you have advice for our viewers on changing those beliefs they might have about themselves?
Okay, so just a few practical tips. Firstly, if you're starting to feel that anger coming on, I invite you to scrunch your left fist. Make a left fist. Okay, you might also like to try, pushing your tongue up against the roof of your mouth Perhaps if you're having a discussion with someone else, sitting down at a table and having a discussion, because that also helps when we're seated. But if you really feel that that anger is getting over and above what you're able to contain in that moment, perhaps just say to the other person, look, it's getting a little bit too much for me right now. I just need to take a moment, so I'm going to leave, and maybe we can come back and discuss this, when I feel more balanced, more level. I would say that the first step is simply recognizing it, having an awareness. To me, this is all part of body intelligence, what I've been studying for years. And just coming back to being what is right for you. Start looking at what is right for you. So when you start responding, in the anger, have an awareness. Stop. If you can stop and just recognize what's going on in the body, and, start asking yourself, is this right for me? What is it that I truly fear? What's going on here? And once you start pinpointing that, then maybe you can start dealing with it. You can have acceptance over it. Maybe your second step might actually be then seeking professional advice from a therapist, a professional therapist. And once again, looking at the different modalities, because not every modality is right for a particular person. But you know what? You don't have to go and talk about your feelings and how, you don't have to get long-winded about the here and now, because what I believe is that the here and now is surface talk. We want to get right down to the root cause so that you no longer have that anger that's coming up. What I would say in the future is for people who perhaps experience anger, there's an emotion that's coming up there with it. But when we're assertive, when we're saying what it is that we need, then we're stating it flatly. There's no emotion attached, and we are able to get our point across without the emotion. But the anger holds the emotion. So assertiveness is where we want to be. It's a place of safety within the body. You're actually probably getting your message across to the other person a lot better than what you would if it's in anger, because when you're in anger and you're yelling and getting upset with the other person, they're probably, going into fight flight, where their, prefrontal cortex is turned off and they're in the emotional state, and, they're scared, they're worried, so they're not going to take on what it is that you have to say. So it's so much better for you and so much better for the receiver to, for you to deliver your message assertively, not from an angry place.
Wow, that's fascinating. Thank you, Julie.
Yeah, no worries.
If you would like to know more about controlling your anger and Julie Makin, please visit her webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. That's all we have time for tonight. Until next week, goodbye.
If you'd like to know more about our show, please like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.